Eve morning. I'm Jenna Wolf. That is Nick Wright. This right here is Chris Broussard joining us this morning. Thank you so much for being with us this week.
It is always a pleasure to be here.
Merry Christmas Eve.
Yes.
Friends.
Merry Christmas to you. You're looking dapper, Mr. Nick Wright.
Much. Appreciate that.
We got a big Christmas Eve show for you today, and we are going to start off with the gift of Monday Night Football. And it was a good one last night. Packers in Minnesota. Green Bay would run away with this one, literally. Aaron Jones had 154 yards on the ground to go along with 2 scores. And Green Bay's defense would do the rest, sacking Kirk Cousins 5 times, intercepting him once. Go figure, it was on a big stage, and Kirk Cousins somehow came up just a little bit short. Packers win 23-10. They clinch the NFC North. Here is Aaron Rodgers after the big road win.
It's really sweet, you know, to celebrate in the locker room with those guys. A lot of guys, you know, weren't here in 16 the last time we got to put these hats on. That was a sweet run, you know, winning 6 in a row to finish it off in Detroit. But there's really nothing like checking that first box and, you know, on the goal list to winning your division. Obviously secures a home playoff game, and now we're playing for even more coming up next week.
So, Nick, the Packers win another game where Aaron Rodgers wasn't the star of the game. Not sure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, and we can debate that. Do they need Aaron Rodgers to be better if they want to make a Super Bowl run?
If they're going to win the Super Bowl, and before the year I picked them to get to the Super Bowl via the 1 seed, and right now if they win and the Seahawks upset the Niners, the Packers will be the 1 seed. What they need is 3 wins, and to get those 3 wins, they need Rodgers to be spectacular once. I don't know that they can survive a terrible Aaron Rodgers game, but Aaron Rodgers really only been terrible once all season. Because they are going to have a bye, I believe, because I think they're going to win next week, because they are going to have at least one, if not both of their playoff games en route to the Super Bowl in Green Bay, and because of the path and the overall quality of their total team is shown last night with the Smith brothers once again playing great. They both have now more than a dozen sacks on the season. I don't think you need Aaron Rodgers to be spectacular in every round of the playoffs. In fact, the year they won the Super Bowl, when Rodgers was really announcing himself as one of the very best players in the entire league, the conference championship game that year, if I remember correctly, against the Bears, he had no touchdowns and an interception, and they won that game, and they went to the Super Bowl. So I don't think this team is like the 2015 Broncos, where Peyton Manning was really, at that point, just someone along for the ride. They need Rodgers to be good throughout the playoffs and great at least once in the playoffs. But I do not think they need Aaron Rodgers to go 3 touchdowns, no picks, 330 yards every single game for them to have a chance. I think they've shown that throughout the season, where they're 12-3. And I would argue he's only had 3 monster games all year. Oakland, Kansas City, and the Giants. They've shown the ability to beat good football teams like the Vikings twice this year, with Rodgers having a good first game and a mediocre to poor second game, and they still handed the Vikings 2 of their 5 losses of the year.
I actually agree with you. I don't think he has to be spectacular all the way through, but he's going to need a game, maybe 2, to get them to the Super Bowl, well, to win it for sure. He's going to have a spectacular game. Because, look, while the running game and the defense are very much improved, we're not talking about historically great running games and deep. I mean, Aaron Jones didn't even make the Pro Bowl. We can argue that he should have, but he didn't. The defense isn't even one of the top 5 defenses in the league. So when you look at who they have to go through, sure, they can beat Minnesota. They can beat whoever wins the NFC East without Rodgers being spectacular. Can they beat a San Francisco without, or New Orleans without it? Because I don't think their defense can hold those offenses down enough where Rodgers can just be okay and they can win. I mean, New Orleans put up 46 points on San Francisco's defense. You know, so San Francisco obviously smashed Green Bay during the regular season, 37-9, I believe it was. So he's going to have a big game to beat one of those 2 teams. And then if you face Kansas City or Baltimore in the Super Bowl, they're going to have to put up points. It's just as simple as that. I mean, Kansas City put up 24 on them on Green Bay with Matt Moore as the quarterback. And Baltimore, obviously the best rush game in the league, Green Bay is like 23rd against the rush in the NFL. So I think they're going to need Rodgers to put up some points and be Aaron Rodgers at least once or twice.
And I agree with you that there's going to be a moment. But I think what makes this Packers team different, the reason I think a lot of people were so optimistic about them, is because you don't need it every single week. Last year's Patriots, who won the Super Bowl, Brady was sensational in the first round. In the second round, he had a sensational final drive and a half, but he was actually pretty poor the first 3.5 quarters. And in the Super Bowl, they won scoring 1 touchdown. I think the Peyton Manning example, I think it has been a while since we've had an instance where a quarterback just had to put his team on his shoulders in order to win the Super Bowl. Hell, you could argue Joe Flacco is an instance where it happened, where he had the 11 touchdowns, 0 picks. I don't think the Packers are built that way, and so much of it will have to do with the path. If Seattle beats San Francisco and Green Bay gets the 1 seed, I don't think you need Aaron Rodgers to be spectacular to beat Seattle in Lambeau. Yeah, I do think you're going to need him to be spectacular if you're going to beat New Orleans in Lambeau, for example. So I think it really depends on how the bracket falls in that regard.
So let's just take a step back for a second. Nick had the Packers coming out of the NFC. I don't know if you did or not. No, you did. And
I don't want to say who I had.
Earlier on in the season, it looked a little shaky with the way they were playing, and they seem to have put it all together in the last couple of weeks. What do you credit their turnaround to?
Well, look, obviously the defense, you mentioned the Smiths, and I mean, their defense is much better, and that's something they haven't been able to count on. And then the running game. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, you never thought you'd say this, at least not for the next 5 years or so. He's been a game manager this year. And I credit him for submitting to the system, because last year and the years before,
really submitting to Matt LaFleur.
And his system. I mean, but he's staying in the pocket. He's making the easy passes, which is something he got criticized for. He was always trying to be Superman and sometimes he had to. But I just picture him so much running outside of the pocket, making magic where nothing existed. And last night was a great example of how he just took what came to him and should have had a touchdown. Devontae Adams dropped one in the end zone. So, but here's the thing with Rodgers, and I'm not going to say that he's not the same. Like you said, the team has changed. They don't need him to do that. But his last 7 games, he's averaging 193 yards a game. He has 8 touchdowns in those 7 games, and that includes a 4-touchdown game against the Giants. So you're talking about 6 games where he had 4 touchdowns. Doesn't throw the picks, obviously, other than, he had one last night. But it's odd seeing him be a game manager, and I think he's going to have one Aaron Rodgers game.
He's going to have to play better at a point in this postseason than he's played over the breadth of the season. But it does speak to his overall greatness that a down year, and I think this is a down year for Rodgers, is right. He's on pace for 4,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, 3 picks, and a passer rating just below 100. But it speaks to the quality of the team. I don't think they got off to a slow start. They started 3-1 with a loss to Philly. They then won 4 in a row. They have 1 bad loss on the year at the Chargers, and that was something where they maybe had some travel issues in how they got there.
San Francisco.
San Francisco was the game that I was about to mention. San Francisco was the game in San Francisco that I thought they looked the worst, and I thought that was their one really poor performance. The Chargers was a letdown against a bad football team. The Niners, that is a concern. As far as for my Super Bowl pick to be correct, I think they might have to avoid San Francisco. I think that might just be a mismatch as far as San Francisco's front against the Packers' offensive line, what one team does well versus the other. But this is what Aaron Rodgers wanted. He wanted a coach that put the team in position to where he did not have to do everything. Right. He has held up his end of it. If they win next week, they are 13-3 and have a bye for only the 3rd time in the entire Aaron Rodgers era, which is remarkable. And they're in great position to make it to their 2nd Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers.
All right, Packers beat the Vikings, pick up their 1st division title since 2016. All right, take a break. Coming up, should the Dallas Cowboys make Dak Prescott